Really appreciate.
Right.
Thank you very much, Christine. I really appreciate the introduction and the opportunity. I'm actually going to start, though, with a confession. I haven't always been able to stay calm in the very difficult moments in parenting. So I have a few moments as a parent that I wish I could actually erase from my memory, because honestly, they're just too painful. And so I want to confess this to you tonight because I know the challenges of learning to stay calm, learning how to set healthy limits and getting your children to behave are very real, just because I've gone through it myself. And so I know, because of my own personal experiences, that trying to overcome being angry or yelling in those difficult moments. I never wanted to yell, or maybe I never even expected that I would be so tested by my children to keep my cool. And so I'm not sure if any of you who've joined us tonight can relate, but if so, you can relate to that. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat, or give me a thumbs up with the reactions, just so I know that someone else here kind of feels my own pain. And so it truly is a daunting task to stop yelling if you find yourself doing it more than you want to or expected to as a parent. And it's usually a topic that, as Christine mentioned before, it grabs parents' attention. And so I'm assuming that you're all here tonight because you want to find ways to keep yourself calm, you want to set healthy limits, and have a relationship with your children that sees them behaving well most of the time, more times than not, right? So no one will have the perfect child, so we'll just set that bar right there now. It's not happening. So, but we can get there most of the time. And really, my part, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us tonight. I'm hoping that over the next 40 to 45 minutes that I'll share my personal experiences. I'll also offer some expert insights and hopefully practical tools that I believe can help you no matter where you are in the parenting journey. And so, in addition to my role or my roles at Dad Central and being the founder of Connected Dads, I am also a father. And so I feel very fortunate. I have three beautiful children. I've got 9-year-old twin daughters and a 7-year-old son. But as you'll see in in this picture here, I now find myself in a new season of fatherhood because I'm blending a family. And there's 4 children there, so that's 12-year-old daughter now. And we also have a new baby on the way in April. So to say that my fatherhood experiences are a little bit unique and challenging, could probably be a little bit of an understatement, just given what's happening in my life at the moment. So, but I share these details because I think it's just important that you understand the context that I'm coming from and some of my own lived experience that I want to bring to the topic. I also share to say that I'm still learning. I don't have all the answers, but I do know what has worked for me and the impact it's made for the relationships I have with all of my children. And so despite my confession that I haven't always been able to stay calm, I can confidently say now that I am a very calm and peaceful parent. And so over the years, I've learned how to build a deeply connected relationship with my children and navigate those difficult moments to keep the relationship strong, as opposed to needing to do damage control. And so I'm of course biased, and I think you already saw this picture briefly, but my kids are awesome. Like, I'm biased, and I love seeing them grow into the people they were created to be. And so this picture with my twins is one of my favorite a couple of years ago, because I really feel that it encapsulates the loving relationships that we have in our family. And it's a wonderful reminder of the hard work that I've put in to see these type of results with my own children. So I hope that as we go through today, that you get at least one practical step that you can take to help your parenting, wherever that might be. So today, the main focus is really these 3 topic areas. We'll spend a lot of time on understanding our emotions and how that relates to staying calm. Next, we'll focus on the most proactive thing that I think you can do to help your child behave and reduce some of those difficult moments that challenge you to stay calm. And that's really creating connection with your child. So they want to behave, and they have less reasons to misbehave. And we'll finish off with the important step of setting healthy limits and how important that is for children as they grow and develop, that they have those limits in place. And so as we go through, I will ask you to participate if you're comfortable. So please feel free to comment in the chat or unmute yourself and share your responses when the time comes. As I said, I'm still learning too, and I welcome you to share your perspective in the conversation today. Also, I want to note that we will be watching 2 short videos. They are based off of Dr. Laura Markham's book, Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids. And so her book and her approach have been really crucial to helping me personally. And she is widely recognized as one of the leading authorities on parent-child relationships and raising healthy, well-adjusted, and confident children. So I am a little bit biased there as well, because I've consumed her stuff. I've done her digital course. I've read so many of her articles, and I know they work. In fact, there are so many times, this is more of like a little funny story. Like, I'm on her newsletter, so I get an email in the inbox probably like twice a week. And I swear that most of the times I get an email, it's like she's literally following us around in our house. I will look at my partner and be like, we just had that conversation about this yesterday? And it's like the answer is right there. So anyways, my reference for her is great resource. So let's keep moving. And in fact, what we will do is we'll start actually with a video from her. So I think, Christine, I need to do one thing before I show this video. So I'm going to stop the share, then I'm going to bring the share back, and then make sure that everyone can hear the sound. Okay. All right.
How to stop yelling at your child. Let's face it, a lot of us have this problem. And it's a problem because the more you yell, the less you'll be able to connect with your child. And without connection, guiding, having a positive influence, or even just getting your child to cooperate will become a challenge. Luckily, Dr. Laura Markham answers this question in the first part of her book, Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids. Summary coming right up. Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids. How to Stop Yelling and Start Connecting by Dr. Laura Markham. There are 3 big ideas at the heart of this book: regulating yourself, fostering connection, and coaching, not controlling. This video will cover regulating yourself, a fancy way of saying your ability to stay calm. We've all been there, that moment right in between when your child pushes your buttons and your reaction. It really is the defining moment. We're all hardwired to respond to negative emotion in one of 3 ways: fight, flight, or freeze. But this moment isn't usually an emergency, and how we react sets the stage for our relationship with our child and how our own child regulates his emotions. Instead of fight, flight, or freeze, studies show over and over again that parents who respond with warm, respectful attunement to the unique needs of their individual child, setting limits supportively, and coaching their child's emotions constructively, raise terrific kids. So to start, when there's a confrontation between you, the parent, and your child that incites your anger, the most important thing you can do as parents is be mindful of your emotion. That means paying attention to what you're feeling without acting on it. After all, research shows that expressing anger while angry actually makes one more angry. This in turn makes the other person hurt, afraid, or angry and causes a rift in the relationship. When angry, wait before disciplining. But how do you shift yourself from upset to peace? Firstly, commit yourself to responding to your child calmly. Say it verbally. Visualize it. Commit to your child even. Let them hold you accountable. Then, when the inevitable happens, stop, drop, and breathe. When you notice you're starting to lose your temper, stop talking. Step away from the situation. Breathe deeply 10 times. Splash your face with cold water even, or say a mantra if it helps. Dr. Markham likes, I choose love. What's your mantra? Let me know in the comments below. Perhaps I'll use it. Remember, it's okay to do all of this in front of your children. You're modeling how to control anger to them. Now, start the interaction over. Sometimes it helps if you consider what's the thought that's upsetting you. For example, he's disrespecting my authority. Realize there's always another side to every story. Like, he's showing me how upset he is. He's allowed to have feelings. Help your body release the feelings. You can tap the acupuncture point at the edge of your hand while breathing deeply, for example. These tips also help you keep your cool when your child has a meltdown. When that happens, keep it simple. Your child needs you to witness her outpouring of emotion and let her know that she's still lovable despite all these yucky feelings. Your child can't learn until she's calm, so in the meantime, tolerate the emotion without taking action. Acknowledge your own feelings and take a deep breath. Realize that expressing feelings is a good thing. Once your child feels her emotions, they'll evaporate. Remind yourself that it's the emotions that she represses that pop up without warning and make her act out later on. Of course, all of this isn't easy. Parenting is hard work. If you're finding yourself frequently resentful, depleted, or exhausted with more and more negative thoughts about your child, or you're just finding it difficult to be patient and yelling more in general, this is a signal that you need to nurture yourself more. Make it a habit to tune into yourself in small ways as often as possible throughout your day, even if you have to set your alarm to do it. And find support from those around you. When you take care of yourself, you'll be better equipped to take care of your kids. If you're wondering how your kids will learn if you don't raise your voice, know that when kids are scared, they go into fight or flight mode as well. The learning centers of the brain shut down. They may comply right away, but they don't really learn anything in the long run. Also, his misbehavior is actually an SOS that your child needs your help. He has big feelings he can't yet understand nor articulate verbally. Of course, you set limits and redirect behavior, but you want your child to follow your guidance because he loves you and would never want to disappoint you, not because you scare him. And this brings us to the next big idea of the book: fostering connection. Fortunately, I have a video summary of that as well, and I'm telling you now, it contains valuable information that will transform your relationship with your child. So check it out. The link is in the description box below. Also, make sure you press how to stop yelling at your child.
Okay. So that went pretty quickly, but it's a very great look at the key component of what we're going to be talking about now, which is understanding your emotions, regulating your emotions so that we can respond to our children as opposed to reacting. I'm not going to go into any of the research. I mean, I think we're all here because we want to learn how to stay calm, and staying calm starts with understanding our own emotions. Just personally, this was, I think, one of the biggest learnings that I had as a father, as dealing with twins initially and twin girls at that, and just the whole toddler stage. There's a lot of emotion. That's what toddlers are, ruled by emotion. And so one of the things I began to recognize is, do I even know what I'm feeling in these moments, let alone how I can guide my children in these moments and helping them even understand and name what are emotions, what are they feeling? And so I was just more curious. I think this is a great place to start, only because, again, a little bit of my lived experience, I realized I was painfully unaware of my own emotions a lot of the time. And so this process started me to become much more aware. And of course, the typical sense is men don't even think about their emotions. They don't, men aren't emotional. There's a lot of the whole stigma around this whole idea as a man as well, but we are all emotional beings. We're created emotional beings. If you're a marketer, everyone makes decisions based off of emotion. I won't go into that for now. But so I want to start by asking this question. If you could go ahead and put it in the chat, A, B, or C, how aware of your own emotions would you say you are? This is just your own self-admission. Go ahead. A, if you think you're very aware. B, if you're somewhat aware. Or C, if you feel maybe I'm not aware. All right, I got a B. Somewhat. Thank you, Christine. Got some B's. Yeah, a lot of B's. Oh, there's an A. Okay. All right, another A, B, B and C. Yep. Good. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, A's, B's, C's, so everywhere. We're all across the board. And so, the first step is really to regulating your own emotions is being aware of those emotions. What are they? And are they in a state that you can actually interact and engage with someone else in a productive, healthy, constructive way? Or are you in a state that you maybe aren't able to? And then you, at the end of that video, talk about you need some more, you need to take some time for yourself. Who knows? But the reality is that we, as I said, are all emotional. And that's the basis on how we make decisions. So the importance, I think, here is that awareness piece. And so again, thank you so much for your participation. I just wanted to get a sense of, if you feel like you're aware, then that's great. If you feel like you're not, this is maybe an area that you can start to begin looking at. Okay, one, what are the emotions I'm feeling? And two, how are they influencing me? And when I say influence, let's talk a little bit about when our children exhibit these challenging behaviors, what are the emotions that they are creating in us? Because I know that they are. And so why don't we just think about it, and think about maybe the most challenging behavior you've experienced with your child or your children recently, and what type of emotions do you experience when they happen? Again, I'd invite anyone who wants to share. You can either come off of mute, offer it, or feel free to put something in the chat. Both would be appreciated. Anxiety, yeah, worry, embarrassment. Great, thank you so much. Very big, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Frustration, absolutely. I think of the morning routine, and I'm like, can we just get out the door? Like, why are we like, what's going on? I get so frustrated. Like, can't we just like get your shoes on, get your jacket on? Come on, like, tension. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan, for that. Tension, frustration, definitely. Yeah. When a child does something that is disrespectful, I feel a lot of anger and disappointment. Absolutely. To be disrespected hurts. It cuts deep, especially when it's from your child. Like, I'm doing everything I can for you. I'm working hard for you. I'm providing for you. I'm giving you the things that are going to help you, and you're going to be disrespectful to me. Yeah, it's hard. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing. I think those are all natural reactions. Those are natural emotions that come up, right? Those are, and they're really hard, right? I think of, a person who commented about anxiety. Um, Sometimes you worry about your child, and are they okay? Are they developing according to the way they're supposed to develop? Is there something else going on here? You start to become fearful and anxious. Am I missing something? What's going on here? Why are we still dealing with this? Those are all, I think, very natural. So it's just important that we recognize that these feelings can come up, and they really are impacting us in the moment. And that's going to impact how we're going to then relate to and interact with our child. And they can sometimes derail us. And so, Jonathan, thank you for your comments. Says, I feel like at times it changes the tone of the rest of the day. Been there. Yes, it does, but it doesn't have to. So this is where we're going to start to look a little bit deeper. What's actually going on in those moments, and what can we do as parents for ourselves and in these situations to de-escalate as opposed to escalate? And so, the reality is that when our children misbehave, we get these cascade of emotions. They're often associated with a lot of thoughts too. And I'm going to talk specifically about unhelpful thoughts or thinking styles that perpetuate or can contribute to those feelings that we're also having in those moments that come up, and maybe helping identify, well, what's coming first, these thoughts I'm having or these feelings, and how are they interconnected? And so behaviors in our children can prompt those negative, upsetting, hard feelings, but they also usually come along with unhelpful thoughts. Some of the unhelpful thoughts that we can often have come in some of these, if you're familiar with any type of cognitive behavioral therapy, these are what they'll call, cognitive distortions. These are things, these patterns that we have that and affect us. And so some of these patterns are one is all or nothing thinking, sometimes called this black or white thinking. So if I'm not perfect, I haven't done this perfectly with my child, that means I've failed. Right? I'm a failure as a parent. My kid's being disrespectful, I've failed. And that's kind of that all or nothing thinking. Overgeneralizing. Everything is always rubbish, nothing good ever happens. And so this is seeing a pattern based upon one single event, or being overly broad in the conclusions we draw. I remember doing this, right? Man, my kids are always so frustrating when it comes to getting out the door in the mornings, right? No, in fact, there were a lot of days it was smooth, it was great, but it's like every time it was, difficult, I sometimes got into that pattern. Emotional reasoning, assuming that because we feel a certain way that we think what we think must be true. So, and when we talk about embarrassment as a parent, like, I feel embarrassed, so I must be a bad parent, right? It's embarrassing to have this happen, so I must be a really bad parent. I'm not doing well. So sometimes we have mental filters, only paying attention to certain types of evidence. And that's an example would be all we notice are our failures, but we never see our successes. Or alternatively, all we see is our kids messing up, and we never see when they're doing well or behaving. Sometimes we like to disqualify the positive. So we're discounting the good things that have happened or that we've done for some reason or another, right? I remember in my previous relationship, encouraging and saying, hey, here are some of the good things. And that my partner wasn't able to receive that, and it was discounted right away. She couldn't see that there was actually something good. We all do these things. Labeling, assigning labels to ourselves or other people. Sometimes we think, I'm a bad parent. Right? I just keep messing up. I'm so upset that, and so that we're labeling ourselves. Sometimes we label our children as well. So these are all unhelpful. They don't actually help us move through these situations better. They perpetuate some of those negative emotions that we have. And so there's a few more we'll talk about. Magnification, which could be catastrophizing, and minimization. So we blow things out of proportion. We jump to conclusions. So we can pretend we know it, or we're mind readers, we know exactly what's going on, or we can just say, well, no, it's not going to work. My kid always has this happen up. I'm not taking them to that restaurant because every time we go, it blows up in our face. So no, I'm not doing it. Or should and must, you could say judgmental or critical words or phrases. And they can make us feel guilty, or like we've already failed, or we apply shoulds. Like, shouldn't be doing that. They should know not to do that. I mean, there have been many times I remember, especially with the twins, I'm like, they're 4 years old. Come on, they should know this by now, right? How come we're saying the same thing? But my expectations were way off, just being honest. And I recognize that. So, or sometimes we personalize things. We take it on ourselves. We take responsibility for things that really aren't ours to take on. We blame ourselves, and conversely, we can blame other people for something that really wasn't their fault either, or that was our fault, but we're blaming someone else. Again, either way, these are all unhelpful thinking patterns that really perpetuate in these critical moments. I'm going to guess, Jonathan, you made a comment, you feel like a time to change the tone the rest of the day. My guess is that's some of these types of things might be happening over and over again. So it's very hard to get out of that thought pattern. You're stuck in whatever is going on, and you're stuck in the awful feelings, and it's a negative cycle that could be part of it. And so the reason I share these is to, again, the idea of awareness. Once we're aware and we see what could be happening, then we always have what's next, which is choice. But if we're not aware, we can't choose. So now the best way to, identify choice is then to do a little bit of reflection. And so there's 3 questions I have for reflection, because we've reviewed our own emotions, and then we've identified some of the thinking that can impact our emotions. We want to look at these things. Now, I invite you to, if you want to, share answers to this first question. Do any of you recognize any of the thought patterns that I shared in yourself? I shared a few that I certainly recognize myself, but anyone else? Again, unmute or feel free to put it in the chat. Overgeneralizing. Yes, thank you, Heather. Black and white thinking, for sure. I was there as well. I don't notice successes, only the failures. Yes. Jumping to conclusions. Yeah, absolutely. Common. Unrealistic expectations. Yes. For me, learning about child development really helped me with that. It was good. Yeah. I remember a particular time. Thank you. Keep sharing, please. This is great. I remember a particular time when I think, the twins were probably 3.5, 4, and my son was maybe 1. And everything just felt so heavy. And all I saw was the mistakes that they made. And I started to recognize, I'm like, every time I think about the kids, I just think about something negative. And I was so upset about that. I was like, this parenting shouldn't be like this, right? I shouldn't be thinking only negative about my kids. And so one of the things that I chose to do was I went and I sat down and I just started writing about each child. I wrote, their name, and I wrote, what do I love about this child? What are the great qualities that I see in this child? What are the things that I know that makes me smile about that child? And so that was the beginning of a process for me of helping to refocus on what is good. And in coaching, there's a phrase that says, where focus goes, energy flows. And so the idea of when you focus on the good, your energy moves towards the good, and you begin to see and notice those things. And so that's just again, some part of my experience. One of the key things that I remember doing was the starting process of helping me through this. So another comment, Christine, you said recognizing if expectations are realistic, and then trying to remember the behavior as an SOS. Yes, as mentioned in a video, or communication can be so helpful. Yes, absolutely. So a quick question then, how is learning about our own thought patterns helpful in helping our children in those moments? What stands out to anyone? Yep, helps us learn to pause, modeling positive thinking. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. I appreciate it. Helps us understand our trigger points. Yes, Ryan, thank you very much. Triggers. I had something like triggers in it, but for time, I'm not going to actually address it, but it is a very important point. Helps us remove the bias based in our own thinking style. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. There's a phrase that I've been hearing a lot, but also repeating a lot is when it comes to parenting, much more is caught than taught. Meaning, and there's a phrase that my mom actually used to use when I was growing up. She goes, "Children learn what they live." And so it's amazing, actually, when you start to see these thinking patterns actually emerging in your child. And that's what that last question was about. Like, are you actually starting to see that? And then you recognize, oh, where is that coming from? Children are this fantastic mirror that sometimes we don't really like looking in, because they point to us to these things that could be triggers that we haven't dealt with, or they could be flaws that we don't want to see. And that can be hard. And that can create these emotions that we don't like. But that's where you can say, well, okay, this is where the work needs to happen. And so anyways, what I want to do is let's talk about tools then. So now that we're aware of this, what are the tools that can help us make choices in those moments to move towards our children, as opposed to create situations that might take us away from, or create less than ideal situations in the relationship? And so one of the tools that was mentioned in the video is this idea of stop, drop, and breathe. 3 simple steps, but in the video is, stop talking, but to me, stop everything. Right? This gives you time and space and really interrupts that thinking patterns, because I think when we react, we're on autopilot. But when you stop, you give that space for which you can then maybe even take it, as we get to step 3, a breath. So then you drop your agenda, because we always have this goal that is motivating our actions in that moment. And it's usually, I have an agenda. I have to get to work. I got to get dinner on the table. I got to get so-and-so ready for hockey practice, or we got to get out that something is usually trying. So at that moment, just drop that your need, because then you want to focus on, what does my child need? And then taking breaths. So there's an actual, breathing deeply helps you regulate your emotions. It helps you pause, give you space, and give you an opportunity to reinsert a healthier thought, which is going to be our next tool, which is, reframing and putting healthier thoughts in. So stop, drop, and breathe. Simple mantra. You can use it with your partner. You can remind each other, and then you can practice it literally every day. I mean, when I started this, that's what it was. Every single day I had opportunities to practice stop, drop, and breathe. And from the simplest to like some of the moments where, oh, I need stop, drop, and breathe right now. But it's very powerful. And the next tool is to replace those negative thoughts in that space while you're breathing. And so first you have to identify it. Ask yourself, is my thought right now helpful or unhelpful? Then you want to replace it. And they use the mantra, I choose love, or choose love. Or you can also replace it, my child needs me right now. It's okay. Or it's not an emergency, because that's sometimes how we react. It's not an emergency. My child's sending me an SOS, right? So, and then you just repeat it over and over and over to turn those calming thoughts into something that you are internalizing and then externalizing in how you interact with your child. Okay. Again, thanks so much for your interaction. I'm going to move on. And so shifting from this idea of knowing and understanding our own emotions into, how do you then build connection? And connection is, for me, the most proactive solution you can apply to transform the relationships and reduce some of the moments that cause children to act out. And another quote from Dr. Laura Markham, and we've got one more video from her, and then we'll go from there.
How to deeply connect with your child. Do you feel you aren't getting through to your child? Like your child doesn't listen or follow your requests, or seems hardened to your anger? Do you regularly yell, give consequences, or put your child in timeout? Well, you don't have to anymore. In her book, Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids, Dr. Laura Markham gives you the tools you need to repair your relationship. Watch on to learn how to deeply connect with your child so that you can have a greater influence and your child can become more cooperative. There are 3 big ideas at the heart of this book: regulating yourself, fostering connection, and coaching, not controlling. This video will cover fostering connection. If you haven't seen my video summary of how to regulate yourself and your emotions, be sure to click on the link in the description box below, as connection just isn't possible without it. Not only does working on your connection get your child to listen to you more easily and accept your guidance, the reward is actually the bonding connection itself. But how does one connect more deeply with their child? The answer: every interaction you have creates your relationship with your child, and in this case, without quantity, there's no quality. Unfortunately, life with its infinite distractions and constant separations has a way of eroding connection. That's why all parents need to repeatedly reconnect with their children. Effective parenting is almost impossible until positive connection with your child has been re-established. So think of it as preventative maintenance before there's a problem. How do you know there's a problem with your connection and repair work is needed? Defiance. If you feel you aren't getting through to your child, if your child doesn't listen or follow your requests, or seems hardened to your anger, If you regularly yell, give consequences, or put your child in timeout, then your relationship with your child needs work. Here's how to repair your relationship. All of us have emotional bank accounts. When we set limits with our children, deny their unreasonable requests, and correct their behavior, things we're supposed to do, we can only get away with it if they have enough positive, loving, and affirming interactions that create a balance in our relationship account. There are many ways to create these interactions, but there is one that is as magical as waving a wand: special time. This is the thing that will transform your relationship with your child. It's the secret answer to all parenting problems. If you take one thing from this book, I suggest it be this: special time gives the child the experience of their parents' full, loving attention. It reconnects us after separations, gives the child the opportunity to unpack all those sad, scared feelings they've been stuffing away in their emotional bank accounts. It deepens our empathy for our child, builds a foundation of trust and partnership, and convinces the child on a primal level that she really matters to the parent. How to do it? See a link in the video description for a video on just that, because it's important you do it right. Other things you can do besides special time are: develop small rituals that reconnect with your child throughout your day, especially around separations. Try to hug your child 12 times a day. Turn off technology. Make evening about family time. When you physically reconnect, consciously refocus your attention on your child. For every negative interaction, you must ensure 5 positive interactions. Become a brilliant listener. Be fully present. Acknowledge and reflect his feelings. Ask non-judgmental questions. Don't jump in with solutions or advice, and manage your own emotions. All of these things help when you want your child to listen to you. Remember, connection before correction. And when we correct, we want to coach, not control. But that's another video, a very important one that goes over how to coach your children when it comes to emotions, teaching appropriate behavior, and teaching skills, all the ways in which we can interact with our children besides connecting. See description below for the video link. It guarantees you raise truly happy kids. And that's it for this video. How to deeply connect with your...
Okay. I think the video does a fantastic job, especially at the end, of giving very practical ways in which we can look to build connection. And connection is all about that, that interpersonal relationship, that attention that that child feels that they're receiving from you as a parent. And so it might sound daunting if you look at that list, but I can tell you, in 10 minutes a day, you can create connection that helps repair the relationship and with your child. And that can be, one of the things that when I started working with fathers, we had a little bit of an accountability challenge. And one of the fathers said, okay, I'm going to now, when I first get home, I'm going to have 5 minutes with each child where they're just going to come and I'm going to ask them about their day. They're just going to talk to me. And it was powerful to hear after a few weeks of him doing this, that it became something that the kids absolutely looked forward to. They actually had their little stool that they would go and they would almost fight over who's first on the stool, because they wanted that time just with their dad, just to listen, just to have him listen and them share about their day. And so it was really amazing just to see how much joy he took from that. And it literally was just being intentional, taking that 5 minutes, giving undivided attention, no phones, no distractions, no nothing. And the children just couldn't get enough of it. And so when you do that, back to that amount, that bank account, you're putting in positive amounts, you're building up that balance in that relationship account. So ideas are limitless. And as parents, I'm sure you're very resourceful and can come up with and know what your child needs. And so it's really about, what does your child enjoy? What do you enjoy? And how can you build that as a regular part of what you do every single day? So beyond that, I think the video did a fantastic job, and I'm mindful of time. So let's talk about setting limits. Ultimately, setting limits it's about teaching kids to set limits for themselves when the time comes. We have to be the limit setters early on, because children don't have self-discipline, because what we're wanting to is develop self-discipline in them. The other thing is limits and boundaries teach kids behavior expectations and how to relate to other people, which are all crucial life skills. So limits are very much needed. To break it down as simply as possible, when you think about limits, I'm going to just say there's 3 steps. We already addressed one of them. It starts with that connection. Then when you do set the limit, you have to do it with empathy. And a reminder here is when you set the limits, children, because they're children, are going to resist. They don't like it. I want what I want when I want it. Does that sound like your child? Sounds like my children. And they need to learn, though, that it's okay to want those things. It's not bad that they want it, but they just may not be able to have it, or they may not be able to have it when they want it. And so it's being able to limit their behavior, but allow all the feelings that go along with the fact that they didn't get what they wanted when they wanted it or how they wanted it. It's okay to be upset about not getting what you want. I'm sure we do that. We don't get what we want in the economy. We don't get what we want in the government. We don't get what we want in our job. We're upset about it. And that you have a right and to have those feelings. And so our children can be upset about it. So it's not about they can't be upset by it. It's about how do we empathize with those upset feelings so they recognize it's okay. But then how do we also keep that limit in a way that they still feel loved and not like we're just out to get them and the relationship is intact. And that is where the real work comes in. And so some of the questions that might come with this simple 3-step process and about how to set healthy limits might look like this. So you might say, well, isn't it just having the courage to say no and enforce it? Well, yes, it is saying no, but it's doing so in a way that the relationship is repaired, and it's not in a way that they feel it's punitive or it's out to get them. That's the big difference. Because sometimes we can just say no and we don't give an explanation, we don't empathize. They're left like, so what do I do with all these feelings and upset? And the more that you can empathize, the more they can recognize you're there with them and builds that positive regard. Next question people might ask, how do I decide which limits are really necessary? Well, I think most parents probably intuitively already know this. Safety first and foremost, right? And then the rest of it is, well, what's age and stage appropriate? And what are the things that are relevant to you and your family and how you want to see your children grow and develop? Again, that should be grounded in what's appropriate for their stage of development. But parents, I think, intuitively know and understand where they need to set a limit. And so it's about working together and making sure that those limits align with, again, development. So, but safety, certainly number one. Some might say, I find it really hard to say no to my child. What am I supposed to do if they won't take no for an answer? So there's actually 2 parts to that. So yes, it can be hard. We want our children, we want to give to our children. We want to see them happy, joyful, excited. Nobody wants to see your child, grumpy and upset or tantruming, but that's not your child's issue, that's yours. And part of the responsibility of being a parent is knowing what is better for children and being able to set a limit that ensures that they're going to grow and develop to have their own self-discipline and not just, ultimately become, give me what I want when I want all the time and grow into that as adults. So we have to learn to say no. And then if they won't take no for an answer, then that's where the connection and the limit and the follow through is really important. And so if they won't take no for an answer, then we need to work on repairing the relationship. And we need to also work on enforcing the limits in a way that are going to let them know they can push and push and push all they want, but it's not changing. And if they continue to push, they're overstepping a particular boundary, there could be further results that may not align with what they're wanting. And so they're going to have to learn those behaviors are not appropriate. Again, as a parent, you have to make some of those judgment calls, but working together as a team will help you with that. What's the difference between setting limits and consequences and or punishment? And so this is a common one and a challenging one, but consequences and or punishment are beyond and usually lack empathy. right? The idea of this limit means that, if you aren't able to, complete the chores that we have for you, you lose out on the privilege of actually going to, a special dinner that we had planned on the weekend, because that's part of what you do every week. We do your chores, and if you don't, that's a healthy limit in terms of the expectation. Yes, there could be a natural consequence, but it's a limit that says the expectation is this, and you have to complete it. And if you don't, you lose out on that privilege. A consequence would then be adding, oh, and by the way, you've got extra chores to do next week, and I'm now taking more money from your allowance. Those are extra added on. That the lesson was you lose the privilege. And that's where you get into those things where that's when children start to get resentful, and they start to say, well, that's not fair, it doesn't make sense. And truthfully, it's not fair when you're adding on things that didn't relate to the fact that just to do the chores. And so, and this is a very difficult one, but it's one that's important. It does the limit come with empathy and recognize the child can be upset, but still doesn't add on things that are extra beyond what's reasonable for the behavior or what the limit that you're trying to establish. So again, every situation is a little bit different, but those are some common questions. I'm mindful of time, Christine. I'm a little bit over, but the last part was a little bit of some Q&A, but I welcome any questions. I just wanted to say one more thing as I go on to the next slide. In terms of resources that we offer, we've got a whole bunch of online resources, a blog, parenting guides, tip sheets at dadcentral.ca. We've got the podcast you reference. We have a free email course called Fatherhood Fundamentals. And ultimately, we're in the process of developing a community which is going to give anyone who chooses to join the membership-based access to expert workshops, Q&A sessions, and with coaches and parenting experts, and some specific curated resources for most of the challenging parenting issues that we run into. So we can be a great resource. So just want to say thank you for the opportunity. And I hope that people have taken some value from the content today. And I welcome any questions.
Thank you so much, Drew. A lot to digest here. And before we jump into the Q&A, I just want to touch base on a couple things and launch that poll. I know we can get to that Q&A very quickly here, but what I'm really taking away from this is all your amazing resources that you have at Dad Central. And I really do invite everyone to explore that, take a listen to the podcasts. I see this new community offer coming up. So a lot happening there. And really, you take all of this parenting stuff, and at the end of the day, I think, there's more and more focus on what I hear happening. And, in a nutshell is we have to show up there. We have to show up for our kids, and we have to calm our own selves down, which is never an easy task when you're rushing out the door or putting dinner on the table or whatever it might be. And we're looking a lot more at these days, the focus on moving away from our kids need to learn how to regulate themselves, like go to your room, figure it out, until you behave this way or that way. And it's showing up for them and co-regulating with them. And these tools and these different techniques that you've provided for us are really, very, very useful and very helpful. So I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for giving us all this information. I think a lot of us are probably going to go back and look at this recording because there's a lot of information there, and we might have to write it down once again. So before I lose anybody, if there's kiddos that are ready for bed and things like that, I am just going to quickly launch this poll. It's just really OPCC trying to find ways to meet the needs that are within our OPCC family and our community. Looking for, what is it you want? So if we could just take a few minutes, that poll should be up on your screen there. Can you see it, everyone? Yeah, perfect. And then we will dive into a couple. We have about 5-10 minutes left with Drew, but if there's any pressing questions, we can touch base with that as well. So thank you. So I think maybe I can keep that poll up there. And if anybody has any questions while they're sort of multitasking here, feel free to unmute. I believe you can unmute yourselves and or drop something into the chat as well if you have anything you'd like to ask you for the 5 minutes we have left with him.
Well, there's no way I did that good a job that there aren't any questions. So
I don't know if
there's
so any
some
tips
that just
on
came in.
yeah, any tips on parenting a highly sensitive child? Quote.
Right. It's us. So we have our 4-year-old. He's very, I would say, emotionally reactive. So he's particularly challenging, like very hard to redirect. Wouldn't you say tantrums run longer than typical? You know, we know something might be going on, but for now, there's nothing known in terms of that. So
Yes.
are there any tips on that? He's very strong-willed. I would say that. So far, he's highly sensitive and very strong-willed.
Very strong.
Very bright. So we're like constantly battling.
Right. Yeah, well, that becomes very challenging as a parent for sure. And when you say he's strong-willed, could you give me maybe one example?
So an example, if he wants something, what's an example? Like trains?
Yeah.
He'll persist on something. Oh, he will not let it go. If you say, no, you know what, I'm really sorry. We can't play trains anymore tonight. We've got to put away, what was it? Treasure map. He will persist on that. So he's getting better about, we can put this away and we'll do it tomorrow. But even if, and I've always sort of set pretty strong limits with him without wavering, but no matter how many times I do it, he will always push and push and push. It's not a good specific example, but it could be anything. Time to do this, or it's time to tidy up. Going to be that reasoning, that pushback, that's his personality.
Right. Yeah. So that could be your answer in terms of that's maybe something that you're noticing as a strength of his, right? That determination, that willingness to sort of, when I know that I want something, I'm willing to go after it. So then from my perspective, the thought is, how do you then fine tune that strength in the areas where it can be advantageous and try and minimize it where it's not as advantageous? So, but in terms of, so that to me is, again, knowing your child and seeing where he can leverage that as a gift, but also even naming something. Wow, you're really determined tonight. You're really determined to get that train set, aren't you? I know, and that's one of your strengths, but here's what I know. Right now is just not that time for the train. And so here's what we can do for you though. What if tomorrow when you get home, we're going to spend 10 minutes just on that train set, just me and you? How would that be? What are your thoughts? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
And
we also find he will say, if you don't give me time or this or that, I'm gonna take all your stuff and put it away, and then I'm gonna hit you, or he'll say anything. He'll say anything to just get around, try.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's not very nice. Oh, okay. That's too bad. And you're really upset.
Right. So this is the age where they are learning what works and what doesn't. What can I say that gets a reaction, and what can I do that gets a reaction? And then what happens in that reaction? It makes it sound like they're kind of like, they are so intelligent and aware. And so the fact that you're already doing consistent limits sounds fantastic. The fact that you're, having these, awareness and conversations even a little bit with them, good. But being mindful that, it's part of this stage. They are learning, testing, pushing boundaries, and that's going to continue over time, but they will eventually learn, again, with consistency and with connection in the relationship. Well, you know what? Mom's always fair. Dad's always fair. Okay, that's reasonable. but they'll still have that strength of persistence or determination or whatever it is you see in him. And then again, trying to redirect it to where it can be useful and minimize where it's not as useful. So those are just some of the thoughts I have based on what you're sharing. Again, it's really hard in every situation, but those, again, it sounds like you're doing really positive things, setting those limits, engaging, learning and growing yourself. So those are positive. Didn't address sort of anxiety. I don't know if there's more there you wanted to talk about.
He has trouble, I think, turning off his brain at night. So a lot of trouble like getting to sleep, and then the sleep patterns aren't great. So we get a lot of behavior from that, the disruptions in sleep. So we are working hard on that. We've got him on like a incentive, like a token chart right now, because it's like it's the only thing that was working really. Like I had to just pull out all the tricks and
all
stuff.
the teacher tricks.
I've been a kindergarten teacher for like 10 years. So I'm like,
Okay.
wow, it's so different. Like when I say he's difficult, he is difficult.
You're being tested
Yeah.
in every way. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, but it also sounds like you're very well versed in terms of ways to work through it. So I don't know that I can offer anything.
No, that's good. That's
My only
it's good.
thought
You don't
is
see it all the time. I see it all the time. You don't.
I'm a construction worker, so I mean, I'm the big booming voice, everything, and I'm trying not to.
He's so scary. I'm like,
you're so scary. And, you know, it's tough.
yes,
I'm working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you're working well together. So keep that going. That's very good.
There's another comment.
There's another question. Yeah.
There's somebody in the same boat as you, Heather, feeling that their child likes to use threats, doesn't like the responses that the parent is giving.
Consequently, we'll say, oh, we're gonna have to put away whatever toy you're having trouble with, because unfortunately, that sort of, then he'll do it. I'm gonna put away all your stuff.
Yeah. And part of that's probably like it is part of the form of connection at that point, you know, and they are still that connection.
That hurt feeling, I'm sure, in that moment.
Yeah.
This is the thing, though.
Oh, there it is.
Just a comment on that quickly is children will say things to create reactions. Personally, I've seen one of my daughters in particular do it pretty frequently, even now. But when I demonstrate, this is just from my experience, when I demonstrate that I'm unfazed by her, attempt to get a rise or a reaction out of me, and I turn it into either resetting a limit. Okay, I hear what you're saying. It sounds like you might be feeling upset about that, but I want to remind you, the rules here are this, and this. And I'm also in a unique situation. My daughter is in 2 homes now. And so she's got 2 different sets. And so while, mommy says, I'm like, okay, I hear you. However, the rule in this house is this. And that may be the experience, but this is, the rule, and this is how it goes. And so they're going to test and challenge and create things that will draw a reaction. The more that we react, the more it feeds into that, them doing it. The less we react and are just, oh, that's great, thanks for sharing that with me, but here's how it works here. They begin to learn we can't push that button with mom or dad. We can try it, but if we don't get the reaction, they'll eventually learn. But again, he sounds very persistent, so he's going to keep trying. But he's also young still.
He'll even say to his little brother, "Go get daddy." Just to let, oh yeah.
They're very smart.
They are.
They're very smart.
He comes up, I gonna hit you. We're like, oh really?
Well, that's when you get to say, well, hitting hurts. And hurting others is not how we do things in this family. And it hurts the relationship. You don't want to hurt the relationship with daddy now, do you? No. The more that you can, just speak out, it's almost like you're playing sportscaster. You're sportscasting what they're doing, but then you're also inserting, this is how we do things, or this is why it's not good, or this is what happens when we do that. And here's how we do things in our family. Can, in those moments, again, with a calm, kind, reassuring voice, redirect them in some ways.
And then chances are they're going to turn around and do it again the next day.
Yep.
And that's why it's so hard, being a parent. It's over and over and over again. But as Drew mentioned, he put a lot of these things into practice himself by the sounds of it. And, chipping away at it, you have the results, right? They fall into place. those limits and expectations ideally become more and more expected, and they're not a surprise to the child. So the efforts are always there, but the amount of work lessens, I would say, ideally over time. I hope.
It does. And one thing I'll add, Christine, is sometimes we have to pick our battles.
Yes,
Sometimes
absolutely.
when my child has reacted in either a limit or a consequence I think would be appropriate, I choose connection first, because then I get to what's underneath this behavior, which is an SOS. And then I recognize, here's how we can reconnect and rebuild and empathize and meet this child where they're at. And that is more valuable than anything else.
Yeah, great advice. I really like that, Drew. Thank you. I am going to be mindful of time. I know we could probably chat for a long time. I do want to let everyone know, and Drew, actually, I did not have a chance to mention this to you, that as of last week, we were supposed to start our dads, grandpas, uncles, men in general drop-in program. It was supposed to start last Thursday, but we had a bit of a setback because the weather was not so great here in Oakville, but we are starting that tomorrow. So we are opening up this program and we're going to give it a test drive, and it's a great opportunity for dads to come in. It's at our QE location on Thursdays at 3:30 to 5:30. We're going to see what that timing works. Some of it might work, some of it might not, but we're going to give it a run. And it's a great place to meet other dads and to connect with our educators and to keep these kind of conversations going. So I invite families to please join in that program. In the interim, I'm available, and I know that Drew has mentioned all the amazing resources that are available on Central. Great for dads, great for moms, great for everybody. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Drew, for being with us tonight. It was a wonderful opportunity, and I really appreciate it. And I wish everybody a good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Good night.
Good night.